Okay, today I'm excited. My buddy Max Powers. Max is a good buddy of mine. He's gonna come teach me some kettlebells and some mace. It's gonna be fresh to death. But yo.
So today, do some yoga, martial yoga with mates. I can't wait, so it's gonna be an epic session.
She do that thing for 3 retweets. The album feel like 92. Now take that bump for he 3P. Chance hold, I said, cruising on that LSD. Ask yourself about my deal. He look back, said, hell yeah, let's see. This shit my favorite song. You just don't know the words, but I still fuck with you. You just ain't never heard. It go like count that stack, rock that captain down that jack. All my niggas hit that zit, and all my ladies round that bitch. It's my jam, it's my jam, it's my jam, it's my jam. About that jam, about that jam, about that jam, about that jam. It's my jam, it's my jam, it's my jam, it's my jam. About that jam, about that jam.
People are not used to spending an hour and a half, 2 hours, 3 hours, unless you're listening to Joe Rogan. And even then, it's like people don't tend to listen to the entire interview. Whereas 30 to 45 minutes is a decent amount of time to get an idea about what the coach is about, what their background is. And, like the conversations we had now, especially, 40 minutes in, we were touching some very interesting subjects that...
But you know what? I think it's also, I think personally I am like that. And I don't know if it's good or bad, but I'm very dispersed. Fitness is probably what people know me the most about. But all my friends that are close to me, they know that I'm not just about fitness. I remember a few anecdotal white belt stories where the first time I went in the gym, I used to be a football player. So right now I'm 200 pounds. I used to be a bit heavier when I started, so 215, maybe up to 220. And when I go to the class after watching some UFC with my friend, we're gonna go try a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu class. So we go in, and then the teacher is late purple belt, 155 pounds soaking wet, like pops 155 pounds. I'm there like 210, 215, all jacked up. I'm like, yo, this guy is gonna hold me down. I look at my friend, I'm like, yo, this is never gonna happen. So I go around, and then, like you said, he forces me to play jiu-jitsu. I get manhandled here and there. It was a pretty small group, so I even have a chance to go with him a second time. And the second time, I'm just like, yo, I'm just gonna defend, right? I'm just gonna keep my arms tight and just gonna defend. Same thing happens, or worse. And from that day, I was like, I need to learn jiu-jitsu. And as the sessions went on, I didn't own my car yet. So every time I would go back home by the bus, like on the bus, I used to be like in my mind, like, what happened in that position? I got choked here. And I would miss my bus stop like 9 times. Go past my house and I have to walk back 2-3 stops because I was just like thinking about the whole session all the time. One of the reasons why I respect everybody in my gym and anybody that's doing jiu-jitsu, you can't deny it, right? You can't lie in jiu-jitsu. You could be the greatest lawyer, the greatest surgeon, doctor. Like when you have the kimono and the belt is tied and everybody's on the mat, no, you can't lie. You really, like you said, like if we were in the jungle or whatever, like it's real, and everybody that has that interest to come back to it and are really to face reality every day, have the utmost respect for that, especially from the fact that I'm a bigger guy, and Brown is not the average, I guess. So anybody that's like 145 less or near that, coming to the gym every day, learning or getting, smashed and whatever, and keep going on, I have a lot of respect for that.
You make an interesting point there. You make a very interesting point because you are a bigger guy. And I guess the reasons why smaller guys, say like myself, I'm like 69 kilos. And there's even smaller people there's people of all sizes that go to practice jiu-jitsu. But I guess there's different reasons why different people of different sizes go to train. Because I think you as a football player, generally speaking, you're built, you're heavy, you're a big, strong guy. So you never felt, I guess it would be very odd for you to feel intimidated.
Yeah, like walking down the street.
Yeah, Exactly.
Barely happens. Yeah. And I mean, not to bring up a huge treasure, I'm black, my face is not necessarily like of somebody that's like an accountant or something. I look like someone that's active physically. So most of the time, it never really happens that I look at the guy on the cross the street like I feel scared or something. It's not something that's accustomed to me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's the thing. Somebody that's smaller, somebody that feels, somebody that's somewhat frail, small, petite, uh, or just generally not physically uh, fit. Let's just say that.
Gifted or yeah, or just favored, whatever.
Yeah, physically favored. They would go to jiu-jitsu and see the potential of it, as in, yo, I can be a smaller guy. Or the best thing is when you see somebody tiny uh, run in circles around a big, strong guy, and you're like,
Yeah.
oh, wait a minute.
And owning the guy.
And owning the guy, you're like, oh, wait a minute. There's something
Yeah.
to this. Whereas with you, yeah, I guess it was the same, but you were the bigger guy. You were the bigger guy, and you were like, fuck this.
Most of the time, I don't know if it's really consciously, but a lot of the times, I wouldn't say that my game is a guard game, but I pull guard more often in the gym, in my own gym, simply because I'm one of the bigger guy, and I don't feel the jujitsu mats is the place I need to show my brute strength. It's a place to show my strength, but more like my strategical strength or technical strength or maybe speed and agility, but not. I don't think for me, taking to a fact that most people are lighter than me in the gym, it's not the place where I'm supposed to express absolute strength, right? I'll do that with my deadlifts or whatever, but that's why I'm a cool guard. Yeah, or a competition, which I haven't done much. I haven't really pinpoint a reason why, but I'm almost a black belt, like I'm advanced brown belt, and I've only done one as a white belt. One, I think it's maybe because when I started jiu-jitsu, I was like with a buddy. I had a guy that I would go all the time with, and when we subscribed for the together for a competition, I think the day before or 2 days before, he had a motorcycle accident, and in my mind, I was like, oh, should I even go? Because I was so accustomed to going with him, which is kind of weird because, you're born alone. You're going to die alone. You should do whatever you want, like,
It's nice to
for
have
yourself.
support.
Yeah. So at a certain point, I was like, oh, I'm not going to do the competition since he's not there. But I went anyways, but I didn't have the urge. I think if he wouldn't have that accident and we both have went, we'd probably subscribe to the next one together as well. And maybe I would have more of a competitive pedigree, if you want. But also being a trainer, and moving and having other movement practices, I'm always somewhat of a physical activity. So I'm not necessarily looking all the time to do more because I'm already doing, I guess, more than most in terms of physical movement.
That is something I wanted
There's a
to
lot
ask
of
you
guys
about
that
because, uh, people that compete a lot in jiu-jitsu, usually that's all they do. They train jiu-jitsu, maybe they do some specific strength training for jiu-jitsu so that when they go and compete, they can compete at their optimum performance. But somebody like, say, yourself that practices, that you competed in CrossFit, haven't you? Quite a few times.
Yeah, in fact, that's actually how I started the personal training in general. But I'm not into that anymore. There's a couple reasons why. If you want, we could go into that. But I guess I did maybe 4 or 5 years of CrossFit coaching and like training myself. I wasn't super deep into competition in the sense that I did mostly team competition, no individual type of events, which is a lot harder on the body and just on the preparation in general. But it's still a fun experience. I learned a lot of nice thing in CrossFit. It's just my real problem with CrossFit is the application of. It's not so much what they're trying to do; it's the way they do it. And if you want a specific point about what I dislike about CrossFit, is the barbell. The barbell in high reps. Like barbell to me, or for what I understand about physical fitness, is meant for maximal strength or maybe hypertrophy. Like 10, 12 reps to get bigger, but not 50, especially not Olympic lifts. Olympic snatch at 50 reps with a barbell. No, man. And the other stuff that I like to do a lot more these days is like kettlebell training, which kettlebell is a strength endurance tool versus a maximal strength tool, which is the barbell is. No?
Push-pull and scissor. The point is, scissor. What I'm trying to tell you guys is, right. So that's what the legs is doing, so the actual move really comes like easy and you hear a big on the ground, but the actual move is that's push-pull. That's the detail. Push-pull was the hand. So let me talk. Dominate the side. Sleeve and collar on the same side. Open the leg. Tight with the knees. Make that shield, right? Maybe it's not the time to go right away. Take a second, right? The shield. Push-pull. Push-pull. You don't feel it's right because you're missing. You're not on the elbow. Push first. You keep push on the neck. Again, this is not valid. Right? Keep the grip. The push, when you feel he's coming forward, pull him over you. Right? Follow, full mount. For seconds, I don't care. Just keep control. 1, 2, 3.
Citizen or whatever is only in the mind part of life, and the body part of life is a place where they want to look a certain way or they want to feel a certain way in some case, but they're not really in touch with the whole body system, right? Because when we talk about body, obviously it's not just about getting into that sweat session, but you need to sleep well, you need to eat proper food to really have the full effect of it. But some people are just like, oh, they're gonna sweat so they could eat that donut instead of just, doing a great movement practice and like reward your body with a good, I don't know, kale shake or whatever, so you stay in that good position instead of like going up so you could go down, like not as low afterwards. You know what I mean? Like if you climb up something or you could jump down, it's not as good as if you just jump up from where you are right now. You know what I mean? As we're into that coach versus practitioner, if you may, like dilemma, sometimes, especially now, because I'm somewhat busy because it's the new year and a lot of more people wanna train than regularly because resolution or whatever. I feel that because I have a little bit more work, my practitioner self is diminished a little bit, and my coach self is a little bit more at the forefront. But for just for the why did I choose to become a coach is mostly because personally my whole life has been very physical, because as a kid I was always like, my mom would always tell me to come down the tree or something like that, or come down the counter, so I was always running or jumping over stuff. And then I played a lot of soccer when I was young, and then football. And when I was in football, I thought that I had a chance to play pro and that was going to be the life. Right? But unfortunately, I told
that you thought, or was it something that other people were also kind of insinuating? It's like, yo, dude, you got talent. You could do this. Was it just self?
Yeah, a little bit. Like, if you want me to be really honest, I knew that if you have an idea of how football works, that I might not have the skill to be like a starter on offense or defense, but I clearly knew that I had the skills to play on special teams, which is when they kick off the ball and there's like a transition. If you score a touchdown, like the ball has to go to the other team, so we kick it off to them, and then sometimes they punt it away. So that part of the game is like the third part. It's not always the same player that are on the field. And I knew that I had the skill because I could run fast, but I was big enough to be able to play football. And I knew I could have an input or an impact at the professional level to do that, to play that position. So being honest with myself, I knew that I probably could have a pro career, but it's going to be a very short one because I was good, but I wasn't like the guy that would win MVP every season. But people told me that, I had the skills, like coaches, like teammates, and people from the outside told me that I had the potential to do it. But unfortunately, it didn't happen because of knee injury. And it's not even partly my fault. It's all my fault because there is a lot of guys that have injury, but then they come back. But I didn't train enough for some reason. Or destiny or whatever. I didn't put in the effort like I should. And I should, like when I had my injury, I should be training twice a day to bring back the knee to its full potential.
But this is in hindsight, looking back on it. But back at the time, you were probably so immersed. How old were you when this happened?
The knee injury I was 23.
23.
Or something like that.
Okay.
So about 10 years ago.
About 10 years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah. So when you're in that situation, it's like sometimes you get so overwhelmed by everything that's going on around you. The last thing on your mind is to sometimes you just don't think logically. You just don't.
Yeah.
And then you look back on after, cultivating and gathering wisdom over the course of 10 years that leads that you're the person 10 years later looking back and saying, I should have done this and this and this and this and this. It just makes me think, it's like, fuck, man, why can't we be a little bit wiser when we're young,
Yeah.
It doesn't happen like that though.
But at the same time, you know what? Like the fact that we develop that wisdom comes from the fact that we lack wisdom in the past and make critical errors that we actually learn from.
So you got injured. You injured your knee.
And I sort of played football because I would get fouled. I would foul people a lot of times in soccer because I was a bigger kid. Like I'm not super tall now, but I grew fast. I grew up fast. So when I was younger, I was often the bigger guy in the team or at school. So then because I was getting pushed and shoved, I remember there's a guy at school who was like, oh, you should try football. Come try my football team. And actually the first year I played football was not even in my area. It was a little bit further out. For some reason, the league let me play in that team. And I played for like Saint Laurent, which is not exactly where I live. And then the year after, because it was too complicated to go over there, I played for my actual borough, if you may. And after football, after it finished, and the knee wasn't perfect, and I clearly could come to the realization that I wasn't going to play pro. I sort of stopped school because the motivation for going to university was to play football. So I wasn't motivated in class. I wasn't getting the grades I should. So I just stopped, and I went on a trip with my friends to Brazil, where it's the first time I saw jiu-jitsu with my eyes. I didn't participate in jiu-jitsu over there, but Brazil? Oh, you know what? I was just kind of lost because I wasn't playing ball anymore. I wasn't going to school anymore, so I was just in no man's land, if you may. I was just working odd jobs here and there. But four or five of my friends were going, and they're like, "Yo, you should come," and I was like, "All right, let's just go." And I just went for no particular reason. A month. It was a very nice trip. It was one of the first trip like alone, like after no crowd, my friends were there, but I mean no parents, no organized trip with a team of football or whatever else organization I could mingle with. So it was very nice, and I really liked Brazil from even before that because I used to play soccer, so I was always a big fan of the soccer, the Brazilian soccer team. And yeah, so when I came back, I had that desire to pursue jiu-jitsu, and I was always a fan of UFC in general. So, and my friend I used to go jiu-jitsu with was one of the guys I went to Brazil with. So we started to go to train jiu-jitsu over there, and it was marvelous.
Oh man, that sounds like a sick story. Getting into jiu-jitsu, the reason you got into jiu-jitsu was because you saw it for the first time. Did you see jiu-jitsu for the first time in Brazil, or did you see it in the UFC and then you went to Brazil and you're like, ah?
Well, it's the first time I saw like the art and the kimono and everything, because before the UFC was more MMA, and there's a part of MMA that has jiu-jitsu, but it was the first time I saw someone in the kimono, strictly grappling, no striking, and then I saw like this little purple belt manhandling bigger dudes, and I was like, that's very interesting. Like maybe 150-pound guy fighting 200+ guy, and like winning, winning. And it was very interesting. And I remember the sensei or the professor was like, "You want to try?" And I was scared of that purple belt, so I was like, "No, not today." And I didn't go. And maybe I should have went. It was probably be a more romantic story, right? The first time I did jiu-jitsu was in Brazil, but it didn't happen that way. But it's still where I learned more from. There's a bunch of my friends. I want them to come try, but I know that if it's not a desire that comes from themselves to come that first time, because if I just force him to come and he gets mad and he's not ready and he doesn't have that interest, he's probably never going to come back. But if he has that interest and he takes comfort into the fact that I've been doing it and he comes with me, there's a bigger chance of him coming back. But if I keep like, come, and then I'm like, okay, today I come pick you up and we go, it's probably going to be a bad experience. Because even for someone that's ready, most of the time, unless you're like a high-level wrestler or you've done some other martial arts, your first session is going to be shit in the sense that you're going to get, manhandled, ragdoll, or whatever you want to call it.
Or even like some of the gyms, they don't have first comers role at all. And even for them, it's a humbling, semi-traumatic experience because you suddenly become painfully aware of how bad your coordination is when it comes to, you don't know where your feet are in space, you don't know where your hands are in space. It's like everything is just like, you feel, the way I describe it is you feel physically retarded. I remember the first time I went to jiu-jitsu and I was like, the teacher demonstrated the technique. I saw it. I thought I understood it. As soon as I went to practice it with a partner, I was like, I don't even know where to start.
I think it's even harder. I think it's even harder for people that had some sort of movement experience or that are somewhat good at other sports. It's even harder because you think you think you're like physically aware, but it's just a different realm. And it's like, just to make a little quick parallel, I started jiu-jitsu just about the same time I became a personal trainer. Okay. So my philosophy got shaped around jiu-jitsu a lot. And I think another thing that makes people physically retarded is the experience of the ground. Like, anybody that's 25 and up, the ground is taboo. It's like, wow, don't dirty your hands on the ground. Don't sit on the ground. It's for kids or something like that. So when you tell people to fight on the ground and kneel, then squat down and stay low and go on your back, it's movement patterns that people barely never ever practice, right? Yeah. So that's a big plus why it's so physically retarding or whatever.
Yeah, you make a good point, but it also depends on the culture, of course. I would say in places like Japan or in the Middle East, that was something I've had. I was really surprised. I had no idea that people in the Middle East have so much contact with the ground. I was naive. There's the praying aspect of it. But there's also they sit on the ground and they eat. When you go to an Afghani restaurant, you sit on the ground, you eat on the ground. And when you see people sit on the ground, they don't just sit in seiza like they would do in Japan, for example. They'll go from seiza to sort of like a hunter squat position, then from that to a squat, because you get kind of stiff, right? And you're like, you just want to change your posture. And I was just so surprised when clients would come to the gym and I would expect, since they never really trained before, it was kind of obvious. But when you ask them to, go into a squat or do something that was low gait, it would be accessible. And I was like, what? How is this?
Yeah.
Why is this possible for them? And yet, when you go to a lot of places in Europe and you try to teach people, a lot of people in Europe struggle getting into a deep resting squat position.
Yeah.
They struggle to navigate the ground in a low gait position. Anyway, that was just an interesting observation. But I would say for the majority of the Western populations, you're absolutely right. It's the ground is foreign to them. At least using the ground with any other part than their feet is foreign to them.
Yeah, because even kneeling is weird, but I didn't realize that. Yeah, in Japan especially, and I guess probably even India and other.
Yeah.
The people are just more comfortable squatting, and it's the mobility behind it as well. Like I'm just always dumbfounded where you have people that are not even 30 years old, and they have a hard time touching their toes. That's something I think, because I the personal trainer in me and the jiu-jitsu martial artist was almost at the same time. It really dumbfounded me, like that people can't touch their toes. Like it's.
Plus, you came from an athletic background. You've done football for a number of years, so I guess you wouldn't fall into the Gen Pop bracket, really. You were an athlete that transitioned into, the strength and conditioning aspect of training and, the martial arts aspect of training. Whereas a lot of people, they don't really come from any kind of athletic background. Not everybody, but a lot of people don't come from an athletic background. And so there's such a big discrepancy in terms of what you're able to do with your body that you're kind of like, I think it's a little bit like a professor at a university when bachelor students go to the professor and ask him certain questions, and the professor's like,
Yeah,
he has to.
We're immersed in our own perspective in a way. Huh?
Pardon?
We're like we're only immersed in our own perspective. Sometimes it's not the most obvious to use somebody else's eyes to see whatever we call reality. Huh?
Which is, possibly the sign of a good coach, being aware of that and realizing that, okay, this person, even though I want him to do this, I could see they can't, and it's a sign of a good coach realizing that, okay, just because I could do this doesn't necessarily mean this person can do this. I need to find a way to scale this down and to make this present this task in small, manageable tasks that will eventually lead to this person reaching what I'm able to do at the moment.
And I think as the trainer, that's the art. The progression, regression, that's the art. That's what makes a great versus a good coach, is someone that's able to find an exercise or corrective exercise or movement that is challenging, but at the same time possible for whoever they're training.
Coaching jiu-jitsu, you're coaching as a trainer. I'm assuming you also do personal training as well. And then you're kind of trying to run retreats. Well, you are running retreats, but you're also in the process of developing something that is entirely your own thing.
Yeah.
Plus you're training jiu-jitsu. Plus you're training yourself and developing your skills. Plus, I guess you attend certain kinds of workshops / certifications to continue developing in your field of expertise. How do you manage all of this stuff? And this is like a very broad question. It's like, how do you manage? It's like, I guess you find a way to manage. But when I ask you this question, I mean, what are some of the what are some of the problems you encounter, some of the struggles, some of the kind of like, so one of the things you mentioned is now, it's the beginning of the year, a lot of people are focused on the New Year's resolutions, which means there's a lot of business, which means you are developing as a coach because you have a lot more work now, but your practice is somewhat suffering. Yeah?
Unfortunately. Like, these days I'm doing a little bit less skills work, unfortunately. I'm just more, just like we said, a little bit, because time is restricted. A lot of time I do a 30-minute or sometimes an hour sweat session more than an actual skill development where I take my time. I just, set 30 minutes to practice something. Now it's more, okay, I have 30 minutes to sweat and then I have to go to the next client or whatever. So these days I mostly do kettlebell stuff. I do some sort of body weight to counterbalance it, sometimes in the workout or sometime later that day. But my skill practice is not where I would like it to be. But it is what it is for now.
Mm-hmm. You make up for it with, a lot of work. The work justifies the decline in physical practice, I suppose. But have you noticed that happens throughout the year? There's moments, there's phases where you have a lot of work, and during those phases, your practice sort of suffers. And then when work goes down, do you focus a lot more on your practice, or do you focus on things like, why did my work, why aren't I getting more leads? Why am I not getting more PTs? What can I do to do this? Can I boost my social? Because some of the people I've interviewed, they are very bent on using social media to their advantage, and whenever there's no work, they'll find ways to, I'm going to boost my engagement. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. Or they're going to try to set up some sort of workshop or, So this is the question. Are you constantly trying to pursue growing as a business, or are you just sort of like riding the wave of work comes in, physical practice suffers, work goes down, physical practice develops, and whoa, you know what I mean?
Yeah, there's a constant flow, like you say, and most of the flow like that you say is often associated with winter, the time that goes down, not only because the resolution stuff, but even December, November, I start in general to move a bit less. I'm way more intense in my physical activities as a whole. I tend to do a lot more mobility, like a rehab stuff, just like cars or spine mobility, wrist, stuff like that. And it's just because I feel that there's less light, especially in Canada. The winters are pretty brutal.
Oh yes.
I just don't feel I have that much energy to give to the practice, whatever it may be, whether it be skills or just sweat session or whatever. So always around the winter times, my practice starts to go down. Around the summer or the months or close to that, I just tend to have more energy. So even if I have a lot of clients, I feel that I'm able to do more movement practice than winter. You have to remind me the question because I'm sort of lost.
It reminds me of this thing Ben Metter mentioned, moving with the seasons. Sort of like in the winter you hibernate.
Could you please remind me that name, because I want to do something about that? Ben what?
Ben Metter. Ben, I think his name is Ben Metter. I'm not really sure. I think it is BenMedder. Ben Metter. And he has this thing, moving with the seasons, which is something you also find in the parkour community. And you've been involved with the parkour community. I think you've trained with Mish Todorovic quite a few times.
Yeah, I still see him a lot. Because I hurt my back as well not too long ago. So I stopped jiu-jitsu for 2 months. And just quick side note, I teach now, but I just sub. Before I had a regular job, like 2 times a week, sometimes 3, jiu-jitsu, same time, same place. But now it's more on and off, because after my back injury, I wasn't able to go to jiu-jitsu. And I also went to go see my girlfriend out of town. So for like almost 3 months, I wasn't in the scene. So my jiu-jitsu coach was like, "You're still welcome to coach, but I'm just gonna give your regular shift to somebody else. When you're ready, you can take it back, but I just need you to commit like 6 months in a row or a year, kind of a regular schedule. I can't have you going in and out." Which there's no beef with my coach. It's just situations a little different with jiu-jitsu now. I still enjoy it very much, even though I don't teach as much. But coming back to the movement with the season, I've found something with tied to traditional Chinese medicine that have some sort of say about seasonal training, and they say that just like nature, when it's winter, hibernation season, we should more go within, in a sense that we should do a little bit less out there and a little bit more in here, in a sense that if there's a practice that should be done more in winter, it should be something like meditation, introspection, and stuff like that, compared to summer, where they associate more with cardiovascular work because the light is there, the fruits, there is more energy available, so therefore we could produce more fire or more, cardiovascular stuff. And then if ever you want to know where they go after that, they have 5 seasons. The Chinese, they have a late summer as well. So late summer is a little bit still like higher intensity, but more muscular stamina than cardiovascular work. And then in the autumn and in the fall, it's more pure strength. And then in the spring, coming out of the hibernation, is more mobility, right? So even more, I guess, rehab work and stuff like that. So that's how they set it up.
I really like that. It just it puts things in perspective, and it takes you out of this mindset of I constantly need to be in the development phase. I constantly need to develop my skills. I constantly need to get better. And I never thought of that. I thought moving with the seasons with Ben Metter, which I have not met, and I don't know exactly what his approach to it is. But from reading a little bit from his stuff and reading a little bit about how they do it in the parkour community, it's like in the parkour community, for example, say it's autumn and leaves are falling off the ground. Some of the games you could play involve, parkouristas in general, traceurs, they use the environment as a playground. So, say you see leaves on the ground, you can play a game as in you're only allowed to step on the leaves, or say you're holding hands with somebody else. Say you close the chain, and we're playing the step on your foot game, but I could only step on your foot if that foot is on a leaf. If it's not on a leaf, then you can't step on the foot. Things like that. And I was like, yeah, that's kind of nice, because then you become a little bit more attuned to what's happening in your surroundings. But that's a different layer than the layer you just proposed, which is the style of training changes with the season.
It's like the cycle.
Yeah, I might actually implement that a little bit, because I've never thought of actually doing that.
And it's also, I also think that one of the problems in the world is that we as human being so intelligent, we tend to perceive ourselves as higher than nature, which I think incorrect. Even if we're able to master our environment and build a house and live in the winter and, shelter ourselves from nature to a certain extent, but we are nature. We are a part of it. And the fact that there is a cycle, there is night and day, but there's also the season, and all of that stuff influence our metabolism in a way. Why not train with the season? Why not move with the seasons? I think
it's not right or wrong, but it's an interesting proposition, I would say. It's an interesting suggestion to try it out. Try out and see if it makes more sense than always trying to increase your 1 rep max, or always trying to, work towards holding your handstand for longer or doing more advanced skills. Maybe, cycling through the seasons is, I don't know, man. I never heard of that before, and it actually just struck a chord with me. I was like, why did I not think about this before? Because I haven't encountered it,
Because even with food, they have some instruction on how to eat. Like because it's so cold in winter, we should eat more soups. And first, because it's cold, we tend to forget to hydrate ourselves. In the summer, we drink because it's hot, we sweat, and it's normal. But because we don't sweat, we tend to forget to drink. Even we have to take into account that most houses are heated, so there's still some sort of dryness happening, right? And that if we forget to drink because it's cold, we don't feel the need to drink, but we tend to be more dehydrated. So food-wise, they tell us to eat more soup or drink more soup. Like in the summer, they'll tell you to like stock up on fruits compared to the winter where you can eat fruits, but you shouldn't eat as much. First, because you don't move as much technically because you're inside most of the time. So
you don't
I think it's
the sugar that you're consuming.
Exactly. So there's a correlation between how you fuel the body and what the body needs to do. And technically, because we are in the industrialized world, we tend to forget that the cycles of the nature somewhat imposes the food that's available to us. But because we're in the industrial thing, we just don't care, we eat.
Kansagon. Ça fait environ 1 minute.
Yeah, this is something my girlfriend actually has been, suggesting quite a bit. It's like, just buy local produce.
I think the best diet
if you buy local
is
produce
local.
and you don't buy imported stuff, it's like you suddenly realize, okay, well, I can't be having, papaya in the winter in Germany. This doesn't make sense.
Yeah. And I think to a certain extent, especially if someone is born and stays at the same place, which is not good or bad, our body's in tune with that, in the sense that in the winter, your body probably has a harder time digesting the papaya than in summer.
It's quite likely.
You guys are stuck in your gym? I'm working out outside. Wildlife.
I'm somewhat into it as a philosophy. I also like the Tao a lot. Like 2 winters ago, I used to have my ritual where when it was time to go to bed, I would put like a video or just an audio of someone reciting the Tao, and I would just close the light, and I would always go to bed with the Tao in the background. And it just I like and it's also in sync with Jiu-Jitsu in the sense that the martial art aspect of it, they have something in the Tao that they call the Wu Wei, whereas doing, non-doing, like to do something without doing, I think it's very related to what we call flow. It's a very long conversation.
Like, it's like the art of not trying, It's sort of like
and letting stuff happen.
Yeah.
And that nature is going to take its course, and you just have to ride the wave, right? So that was very interesting to me. Also in martial arts, in the sense that in jiu-jitsu, you can't just be pressing the guy. If you press the guy all the time and you find a guy that's half good, that pressure you put is going to come back on you. So you have to be able to wu wei in a way, or to use his energy for your benefit without doing anything. And then the Chinese medicine comes from the fact that my girlfriend is a naturopath, and the first certification she did was naturopathic through like a Chinese type of way, if you want. Now she's in a, if you want, formal school education that is more. I don't want to say science-based because I believe they have science as well. It's just we might not understand how they do it, the Chinese medicine type stuff. And from her studying in and me sharing in the interests of fitness and health in general, I was helping her.
Is, tightly interdependent with this stuff, the martial arts aspect.
Exactly. So I learned and also took a little class on the acupressure massage and the meridian. So even there we had more input on how that system of cycle works and the organs and the meridian. I really love how it all matches, right? They all have those, like, the way you're supposed to eat with each season. Each season is also associated with an organ, in a sense that that organ is more active during that time. In the traditional Chinese medicine, if I'm not mistaken, the liver is more active in the spring compared to in the summer, which correlates with cardiovascular. The heart is more active in the summer, and I don't know which or what.
Regardless of whether or not this is actually scientific fact, it offers it seems to me like it offers a more interconnected, interdependent, holistic view of the body within the world we exist in. It's not, we're not separate from our environment, we're not separate from the mind, and it kind of, if you believe that, it's not even about belief. Okay, if you believe that, it will definitely becomes a dogma, and you don't become open to other religions and other ways of thinking. But if you're open to that kind of thinking, I'm just curious what kind of effect it would have on behavior, on well-being in general, because it just tunes you in. It's like if you think that during the winter you should be more introspective, you should, according to Chinese medicine, it is wise to be introspective and see if it works better for you to be more introspective than to go to the gym and just lift heavy shit and just push so that you look sexy for the summer.
I don't know if it happened beforehand or afterhand. I understood the traditional Chinese medicine philosophy, but I always found myself, even before being a full-on trainer, like I've always been into sports and fitness, but I always felt myself in the winter diving deeper into some sort of study, whether it be fitness, philosophy as a broad term. I always found myself, simply because we're more inside, right? We spend more of our time inside and more into studying more something. In a place where it's more easy, more efficient to study, right? You're inside.
I was going to say that, but yeah, I was just waiting for you to complete.
You know what I mean? So you don't have the same urge to go out running when it's minus 25, but you have an urge to read a book because it's just better for that, right?
Yeah, winter kind of forces you to be in environments that are conducive for studying, for learning, or other practices. I would say, indoor practices in general. Indoor practices.
Yeah.
But yeah, I would say also in the winter you are less willing to consume energy simply because you want to use a lot of that energy to warm yourself up. I guess, as animals living in the wild, we would use a lot of our energy to shiver so that we can warm ourselves up. You wouldn't use that energy to start, lifting heavy shit or climbing up trees and whatnot.
And if we correlate it to the fact that nature has less to give us as well, so we should be more or stay put more because.
Nice point. Yeah.
Even the animals, even if you're someone that's a meat eater, we see them less in winter because some of them are completely hibernating, and the other ones are just, more on the run because they don't stay put as much because it's not hot. So there's less food, there's less calories available. Therefore, we should technically, according to the traditional Chinese medicine, expend less energy. At least out there, maybe more inside.
Just with the information you just offered, I think it would this is something useful. I feel like in every single interview I've done so far, there's been, a few there have been quite a few insightful points that have been shared, and for me, this is definitely something that also makes winter more bearable. You know, it just makes winter a lot more
There's
bearable.
now a purpose for it,
Yeah, there is.
right? There's now a purpose for it.
And you
Right?
get to
It's
see
time to
you get to look
reflect.
outside the window and be like, okay, it's turning into spring. It's time for me to slowly transition into a new form of practice. Still physical,
Yeah.
but just a different form of it. And then, you know, you get used to it. It doesn't bother you. You're not like, ugh, it's winter. Yeah.
Yeah, it's normal. It's almost like, you know how the Tao is based on the yin and yang,
I don't know anything about the Tao. Sorry.
but you probably have an idea of the yin and yang,
I have an
right?
idea of the meaning.
Most everybody does. But unfortunately, a lot of people are saying like yin and yang as good and bad. Because of our like mental construct, it's not good or bad. It's just hot and cold. You know what I mean? In a sense that first, I believe that for something to be good, there needs to be something else to be bad, and it's not that bad thing is not inherently bad. It's just the opposite of good. The same way, cold is not necessarily, or I mean, hot is not necessarily better than cold. It's just the opposite of cold. You know what I mean? It's just a spectrum. It's not necessarily like dogmatically better. You know what I mean? Or dogmatically worse. Dude,
And it's a little bit like
whatever.
this. I think it was from the Book of Five Rings. I don't remember exactly how, you know, the way it's written in that book is just really, strange. 4th century samurais, but it was sort of like, water in certain quantities can be good. Water in other quantities can be bad. You know, there's everything has a potential to be both, depending on how you perceive it, use it, and so on and so forth. So it kind of made me think, oh, well, at least with the water example, I was like, just the right amount of water is used for drinking, taking a shower, taking a bath, da 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 da. Poisonous amount of water would be you basically drowning under a massive wave. You know, that's when water becomes deadly. Same thing with weed, I would say, with cannabis. You know, you could smoke weed every day and become, and you know, there's some people that smoke weed and they get paranoid and they get insecure and you know, whereas other people, they smoke weed and it just fuels their creativity.
Yeah.
It's with everything. It's all a matter.
There's another beautiful. Sorry, keep going. Finish your.
Go ahead.
I was just going to. There's another beautiful analogy about that, which Cus D'Amato, the head coach of Mike Tyson, that passed away, he makes a parallel between fear and fire, and the same way you talked about water, he talks about fire in the sense that fire cooks your food, heats your homes or whatever, but too much fire just burns the house down. The same way a healthy amount of fear motivates you to go up and go work because you don't want to be broke. But at the same time, too much fear maybe paralyzes you into not doing anything. Right? So fire and fear are almost equals in that thing, but I don't remember how he said it. But there's a nice quote that's pretty poetic where he explains the correlation between fire and fear
I remember
and the
somebody
amount.
mentioning, yeah, I remember somebody mentioning a swimmer, somebody who was planning to go to college and you know enter the varsity team, and he was telling me that this was back when I was in Canada. He was telling me that his coach constantly tells him to, instead of perceive fear as something um,
Bad.
that is bad, you should see it as fuel.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I guess every coach must have taken some courses in sports psychology at some point, or if not, it would be a good idea if you did, because I think that's one of the things they might teach you in sports psychology, how to, mold the perception of athletes, and that's an extremely useful tool, especially for somebody that's never heard of that before. That everything has the potential to be beneficial or non-beneficial depending on how you use it, and we tend to associate fear with something negative, though if you start perceiving it as fuel, then you could use it to your advantage. That's something I've noticed with slacklining and highlining. It's like, man, if you let fear overwhelm you, you cannot even mount the line. You cannot even mount the line.
But you need to some fear, right, to take into account that whatever you're doing is somewhat dangerous. You need to be alert. At the same time, if it occupies the entirety of your mind, it's just going to make you fall, right?
Exactly.
Just like I'm.
Yes! Yeah, I nailed it.
This is what I want. I want the people I'm having these conversations with to share who they are, and the people that are listening, the people that are going to be watching this, may be inspired by what you have to say. You might trigger an interest to try jiu-jitsu, or travel to Brazil, or change the way they perceive the season, or maybe have a look into what the Tao is, or maybe have a look into Chinese medicine or naturopathic medicine. It's sort of like a medium through which they can get inspired and delve deeper into their own research, either into their practice or, like you said, don't get pissed off if your practice is suffering because you got a lot of work. It's good for work, bad for practice.
Yeah.
Things might change later on. When work goes down, work on your practice. So these are very useful tools for people that are considering mixing the two together, work and practice. So the last thing I want to ask you, go ahead.
If I may add, the way you said it, I think is very important. If people are thinking of mixing them, start by mixing. Like, in a sense, don't, unless they have a clear plan and they have a backup, just not necessarily to cold turkey cut whatever job they're doing and jump into fitness or whatever type of movement practice they choose to do. I don't think it's very wise. It's a hard business. I think a little bit, and they should maybe start teaching people only on the weekends and keep their day job, and then see if it can grow from there. But that's my tip to them, not to just jump into something like blindfolded and stuff like that.
And baby steps. Yeah, and slowly transition into.
And it's also like, I don't necessarily, I think people are more fitness or health conscious these days, but I don't necessarily think that people need another generic coach. If people need to own their craft, whether it be jiu-jitsu, kettlebells, or whatever, go into that business if you really have something to offer. Don't just become a coach that is just like, okay, guys, let's just sweat and just push people to almost throw up and not really understand what is movement. At least I have my own views, but find their own views first and then really try to do it for a higher purpose, not just tell people to sweat and then try to get money off of them, you know. Try to get people to move better without pain, try to get people to feel better with themselves, the way they move in their body, but not just go sweat, you know. I don't think we need that.
I think that is a sterile kind of approach. Maybe some trainers need to go through that at some point in the beginning.
Yeah, like it's never going to be perfect. And you always, like, I like the way we start the section where you said it's planned, but it's not like, you know, planned to the dot. I'm just going to let stuff happen kind of organically, because if you sort of stay stuck on the detail all the time, something never gets done, right? It's never getting even started. And I want to acknowledge you because you're doing what you're doing, and it inspires me to maybe doing something that's similar. Because I've always, I like to talk. You know, it's been an hour or so, and I didn't even realize it. I like to talk a lot. It's something I like to do or share. And I think podcast is like the new medium that everybody's into. And fitness is a topic that everybody is interested in. I think I have a lot to say about it. So hopefully whatever we did today is going to push me more to do my own stuff and maybe help impact other people.
Off. It's like he just wanted to document the experience. And I think soon after that, he wrote a book, which is also why some of the blots you find, some of the acid blots you find, you'll find some artwork of a figure riding a bicycle, and they're making it's a reference to the book. Which is
and also just the trip part of it, right? It's always called a trip, right? Whether it be a bike trip or whatever. It's about maybe even the bike is the actual psychedelic as the vehicle, you know, and the trip is just on the bike.
Yeah, it might be. Yeah, it might be an analogy for that as well. I wonder where the word trip came from. Maybe if it is from the bicycle trip, then that'd be interesting. Because I don't know if people say Aborigines that try ayahuasca describe their experience as a trip.
I'm not sure.
Possibly not. Possibly not. They respect that drug way too much to just give it a term like that.
But you know, the same way I'm like telling people or yourself to maybe try it, I really think psychedelics not something you should mess with. I think that if someone is expressed interest in it, it should be with careful settings. You know, It should be. I don't believe people should do it just like. I mean, I don't want to put whatever your experience was down, but I mean, I don't think people should just go out and trip on it. I think the real essence of these drugs is to really reflect and take it and use that medicine to go within and really.
This is something that's coming from somebody that's almost 33, 34 years old, right? A kid at the age of 16, 17, 18, 19, 20 that gets his hands on this thing doesn't see it like that. And that's why in cultures like in the Amazon, kids do take ayahuasca, but it's always under the guidance of a shaman. Whereas in the culture we live in, it's not. It's not.
Yeah.
And you're absolutely right. The setting needs to be. The setting is of paramount importance. Who leads the ceremony is also important. The intentions behind trying it is also important. In these cultures, they also see it as a rite of passage. They don't see it as You know, a party drug. It's not a party drug. It's a rite of passage, and they regard it with the utmost respect. I wouldn't be surprised if they see the drug as sort of like a gift from some divine entity.
Yeah.
And it's like it's nothing to be messed with, you know. It's like you don't fuck about with God, sort of.
Yeah.
You know, so and we don't have that. We have a culture that doesn't really believe in God anymore. We have a culture that doesn't have rites of passage. We don't have rites of passage. The only rites of passage that we have in our culture are the military, which a lot of cultures don't have. Martial arts, which a lot of people don't do. And that's it. We don't really have rites of passage. Our rite of passage is what? University? Fuck off. Fuck off. Fuck off.
Yeah.
I mean, university is tough, of course, and you grow as a person. But man, rites of passage. If you look at the past, the rites of passage were.
There's a clear difference between before and after.
Yeah, that's what they call it. It's like the liminal stage. The liminal stage is the point where you it's the point of no return. You know, it's a point where when you've seen the Matrix. You want the red pill or the blue pill.
Yeah. We need that point. People have to choose.
Yeah, and for a lot of cultures, it wasn't a choice. For a lot of cultures, was you do this, and if you live, you're a man. If you die, you die. Crazy. Yeah, man. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.